Welcome to the Designing Hollywood podcast in association with the John Campea Show. I am your host, Robert Meyer Burnett. The Designing Hollywood podcast show is dedicated to all things movies, the movie industry, and its talented professionals. From directors, producers, writers, cinematographers, and of course, costume designers. Designing Hollywood covers some of the most celebrated professionals in the motion picture industry. The show explores the artistry, the craftsmanship, and the stories that bring our favorite motion pictures to life. Today's guest is an award-nominated costume designer whose work has helped shape some of the most emotionally raw and visually striking projects of the last decade. From the psychological intensity of Hereditary to the quiet realism of Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, to the bold, character-driven storytelling of Love Lies Bleeding, her designs consistently deepen narrative and character in powerful ways. Most recently, she brings her signature storytelling approach to Season 2 of Netflix's Emmy-winning series Beef, starring Oscar Isaac, Carey Mulligan, Charles Melton, and Kaylee Spaney. Without further ado, please welcome Olga Mill to the Designing Hollywood show. Olga, it is great to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much. What an intro.
Well, you did the work.
I don't know. It's very flattering to hear it phrased that way. Thank you.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Thanks for being here.
I'm excited to chat with you, of course.
Now, I'm interested in your background. I'll freely admit the first girl I ever loved was from Russia, and my ex-wife was Ukrainian. So, not that that's a bad thing.
Slavically minded.
And then, of course, so much cinema history comes, especially from, Sergei Eisenstein and the Odessa Steps and the Battleship Potemkin and all that. I have to ask you, what was it like being a child of two worlds, being from Ukraine and also growing up in New York City?
So I was born in Odessa, so the Odessa Steps are definitely a sense of pride. I think it informed becoming a designer in a big way, because I moved from Odessa when I was 5, and it's at that age where you're sort of too young to be really self-conscious in a way. And I think when I was younger, I was no big deal. I just transitioned pretty easily, and then the older I got and the more you go to therapy, you're actually that was really formative. But I know a few people who immigrated around that age, and then by 5th grade I was president of my 5th grade class. Not to brag, but I think what reflecting on it makes you kind of hyper assimilate, right? You
Sure.
Drop down into a new culture, be it an elementary school, and you very quickly, I remember kind of looking around and being okay, this is this type of girl, this is this type of girl, which one do I want to be? And sort of realizing that clothing is how you sort of signal who you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you kind of have to assess and mimic really quickly. I think as a immigrant, as a kid at least, that was my experience. And I think part of being able to decode what somebody's, I don't know, whether it be status or type or something, by their appearance is a survival thing as an immigrant kid. And that's totally what I feel costume design is, except
Right.
You're sort of reverse psychologing it,
Yeah.
Where instead of in a room, you're trying to decode what everyone is so you can figure out how to feel safe and integrate and all of them be accepted. You're sort of doing it by reading a script and being okay, what do I need to signal about these people? And then again, reverse engineer it through what they look like. So I think it was actually quite formative career-wise.
That's really interesting. I always ask people, part of the thing we do on the show is that we always ask people how they got started. And a lot of people tell me that they began like they were designing or sewing clothes for their dolls when they were little kids. Or then they didn't get into it until they discovered theater in college. And some people have really strict academic backgrounds and studied art history, but then other people just kind of were thrown into the deep end and started designing. How did you find your way into costume design?
I know, it's so cool that there's no like one path towards it. I think for me it was like it started more with just like being like a theater nerd, not necessarily like costume specific, but there was like a community theater I grew up in Brooklyn that like a friend took me to, and I was like, I love everything about this. And then I went to another kind of like, I don't know, anchoring step along the way, I think was I went to a performing arts high school in the city.
Like in Fame.
In New York. Yeah. I went there for acting as a theater kid, just because I didn't know there were other things you could do other than like be an actor, you know. And my sister had gone there for art, and so I went, and very quickly I was like, I don't think acting is for me, but a lot of the same kind of stuff you learn of like analyzing a character, breaking down a script, feels like it, you know, is very much applied today. But I remember like feeling a little lost, where I was like, I definitely don't want to be an actor. And then you would do your scenes and you had to put together your own like sets and costumes, and it kind of clicking where I was like, oh my God, this makes so much more sense, you know? And then I always feel like it's kind of romantic when people like fall into something, you know? But my path was actually, I feel like, quite, I don't know, calculated or sort of like bulldozery, where I was like, okay, I want to do this, you know? And then I went to SUNY New Paltz for like theater tech in New York. And then I took a year and like worked in a costume shop as like a draper's assistant. I worked in a dye shop, which was like really cool color theory.
Yeah.
And then I went to NYU for costume design for graduate school. And then assisted for a while. I assisted on Boardwalk Empire, and that was like really helpful.
Yeah, I was going to say, I look at what when you went in and were assisting on TV shows, you worked on some dope shows like Boardwalk Empire, Gotham, Blind Spot, and a show that I love, The Get Down. You know, a quick little dip in the Get Down. But I mean, all of those shows, Boardwalk Empire, Gotham, Blind Spot, and The Get Down, all had great costumes, different kinds. But that must have been so much fun for you.
So much fun, and like such a huge learning experience. Like especially, I would say like Boardwalk Empire, because I was there for like a while. I was there for one full season, but I started there as a PA and was really like, when I talk about being kind of calculated or sort of bulldozery, after graduate school, I was like, I really want to work on it because it was kind of the biggest period show that was in New York. And I really just like cold called the costume department and would like leave a message and be like, I'm in the union, but I'm happy to PA. I remember having to clear that with the union. And then I think their PA, who was specifically like paired with the designer, with John, and with Lisa, were like, I think they had to leave early or something like that. Anyway, so they brought me on like mid-season as a designer's PA, and I had to like drive them to set and things like that. And I was like a really awful driver. And so very quickly they were like, well, you could do research. And it kind of evolved like that. And then the next season they hired me as a shopper because I had like fabric knowledge. So they were just so like supportive. And then when after a full season, I was like, I want to design things, but you kind of have to like Frankenstein financially at first,
Sure.
where I would like design really things for very little money, and then I would go and assist on Boardwalk for a few months and kind of subsidize like early design career. And just learned so much. And the same thing with the Get Down. It was like seeing these like huge, massive period shows, both like how they are done creatively, aesthetically, but also just like the machine, like the mechanics.
Yeah, of course.
Of like a department like that was so helpful and just really inspiring. And I actually saw John Dunn recently. We caught up, and it was like, I don't know, so it was very like emotional to see him in a way. I felt so thankful.
Well, I've told people a lot that I think going in and being a PA, it seems like people just want to graduate now and I want to be a producer. And I'm like, but you don't even know what it's like. Like you brought up the whole ecosystem of a set, like learning how a set works on every different level is something you can't really be taught. It's like the Matrix. You have to see it for yourself. You have to get in there. And I love that you said that. And I was really curious about the fact that then you transitioned from being an assistant into a costume designer, but you started costume designing short films. And I think that was a great choice as well. Were you doing that in your spare time, or were people hiring you? Or were you doing these big jobs as an assistant on big TV shows and then doing the shorts in between? How did that work out?
It was kind of a mix. It was like a while ago now, so I'm trying to like not lie to you, but I think it was a mix. If I remember, like, because a lot of those short films were friends that I had made through the film program at NYU.
Sure.
Like, the design program is kind of more theater based, but they do link you up with the film department. And if you have an interest in it, like the people that are in the film department are super eager to have designers come and work on their stuff. So I really tried to like take advantage of that. So some of that I would do like, in between or on the weekends, or I think even a few were while I was still in graduate school. So it was always kind of like pieced together, but I feel like those big shows, again, so thankful for, because they like subsidized early design career, and also just, again, creatively were very inspirational. And I think it took me a long time to like, in terms of like evolving career wise, I remember at first being interested in costumes and being like, oh my God, I would be so happy just working in a costume shop, and then doing that and seeing assistants come in and out and being like, oh my God, it would be so cool if I was just an assistant. And then doing that, and then like, your ambition and your ego is just keeps growing. And then after being an assistant, being like, oh my God, no, I actually like really want to be a designer, But for me, I think each of those steps was necessary, both learning wise, but even just on a personal level, I feel like it like gave me permission to want those things or to take up that space in a way.
Well, I just love to hear, learning. You're talking about learning a craft, and you learn by doing. That's what Kirk said in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. We learn by doing, and that's kind of the way I think that the entertainment industry works best, because you're not just doing the actual job, but you're also learning. Look, it's a social business. It's a business, and you're dealing with actors. So you're I've often said that if you're going to produce a movie, aside from catering, which I think is the very first thing you should do, is make sure your crew is well fed, because then they'll work for you longer. But it's your hair and makeup people. That's your first line of defense with actors. If they know you've got great costume people and you have great hair and makeup people, those are the two things, or three departments. Costume, hair, I always think of costume. I mean, hair and makeup is one department and costume is the other. But actors need to know that they look good. They should never worry about how they look or how their makeup, and when they step out on set, they can just take care of their characters. And so,
100%.
And you have to be a psychiatrist as well as a costume designer, and be
like
mindful.
The whole job.
Yeah, and I love hearing you say that learning that and your ambition helped push you through. I think that's really great advice that I wish more people would understand, that you learn by doing. You work your way up. You can't just jump into the deep end and not know anything. So once you became a full-fledged costume designer on your first feature or a TV show, what was the difference? Now you're calling the shots. You've got a team below you. How did that change for you? How did it become? Was it harder, or because you had so much experience, was it easy to make the transition?
I would say no, it's hard. I think the transition is hard, because I think even though I did have like that experience, it still very much felt like deep end, like doing Dog Eat Dog with Paul Schrader. There was so much I didn't know, like literally, like I remember doing like a fight scene and like not really knowing the concept of like, even though we did so many multiples on Boardwalk, I don't know, but having like real blind spots where I was like, because the thing with like being a department head, right, is nobody's like, okay, these are the things you need to make sure you do. Like, hopefully you have a really solid crew, so everyone's kind of being a safety net, and your assistant and supervisor are all checking those things. But especially on smaller projects where it's a really skeleton crew, if I think about it now, I was like, oh man, I really like showed up naked kind of in some ways to that job, because there was major blind spots. And I think also, a big part of it is like you're saying, you have a crew and you want to make sure everybody feels like it's a good working environment. You want to make sure everyone feels like inspired to do their best work. Just the mechanics of like a department, there's an HR element to it.
Right. Especially today.
That you just don't get like taught in school of how do you have like a healthy work environment, how do you keep things moving, and then also you're just it's like you're saying like the psychology of dealing with actors, right? And the same thing with a director and a producer and a showrunner. It's like you're having those like conversations that are over text, like managing all of that you don't do as much in a different position, can be, you're just on in a different way all the time, right? And it can be kind of intimidating or overwhelming, but you also I found it so rewarding, right? It's like, it's all your responsibility if things don't go well, but there's so much pride when you're like, oh man, we just pulled that off.
Right. Sure.
So I really I don't know, I love it.
Well, like a movie like Dog Eat Dog, I mean, Paul Schrader, Hollywood legend, goes all the way back to, he wrote Taxi Driver, but he started making movies with like Hardcore, George C. Scott, and American Gigolo with Richard Gere in 1980. But in Dog Eat Dog, you're working with Willem Dafoe and Nicolas Cage, so you're also working with Hollywood royalty in front of the camera. How was your relationship with the actors? Was it intimidating? Were you ever starstruck, or did you just jump into it?
Like all of the above, you know what I mean? I feel like it was intimidating. Like it was like one of my first films, and such a fan of Willem and of Nick, and they were both like really generous. I feel like I remember having really long fittings with Willem, and like until we sort of nailed it. And again, if I look back on it, I was such a baby, and like he he must have known, but he was so patient. And I feel like it was my first experience of like, he had a thing that I realized is like really like the alchemy of anyone you're working with, whether it's a director or an actor, when somebody is very open but very decisive. Like you could have one or the other and it's like not as much fun. But when somebody is super open to being like, oh my God, I never thought of it that way, but let's try. But then also very quickly can be like, this doesn't feel right. You move on. Or like, a genuine openness of like, I'm not going to just try it and not be into it, but try it and be like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, actually, this does like hit a note that I'm looking for. And he had that quality. And then I feel like I like look for it all the time with
Sure.
collaborators, and have been really lucky on that front. Yeah, they were both like, and Nick too, just like really decisive, really efficient, really knew what the character was. And it was actually like quite smooth with both of them. And I think that was also a lesson for me. Like, I feel like, yes, there's people that are sort of really, big actors, but at the end of the day, when somebody's really good at their job, it means they're really prepared, really smart.
Right.
And if you try to meet them there, it's like no baloney,
Well, and also you developed a relationship with obviously Paul Schrader. You went on to do First Reformed, which again sports an incredible Ethan Hawke performance. I mean, that film's also a knockout. What's it like when you're working with a director? How do you go in and present your ideas, and also other people that you have to work with, the production designer and the director of photography? How do you interact with those key players on a film or a TV series?
I try to like be really malleable. Like, I have my own process, right? Where I'll kind of do like, I don't know, I feel like it's like a grad school term of like an emotional response to a script. That's really just like letting yourself read it and then go and put as many images in front of your eyeballs as you can, and collect the ones that resonate, even if they don't necessarily make sense, or even if they don't speak to any kind of clothing choices. Just let yourself have like a kind of like instinctive hunting gathering experience,
right,
of visual after you read a story, a script. And then in terms of like sharing, there's like the mechanics of what happens, which is like, I'll gather those images, put together decks, you share them, you have the conversations, they bring images. But really what I think like most of the work is just getting on an interpersonal level, like comfortable enough with all of your like key collaborators to be like, do I feel comfortable throwing out a stupid idea?
right.
Do I feel comfortable like saying, I actually don't know, I need to think about it and I'll get back to you?
And trusting them enough
saying,
that they understand what you're doing.
Yeah, and trusting that they like trust you, right? Like, it's the sort of getting again like enough of a foundation laid down just as people, that you're not trying to like, yes, you want to impress a director, actors, or production designers, but more that the interactions become more fluid,
Sure.
know? And I think that's when like creatively it becomes really like fertile soil. But yeah, I think just trying to actually have like a human relationship leads to better work, because then not every interaction is like a formal scheduled meeting. That's why
Right.
It's like so fun to work with friends, because then you're just able to kind of throw around ideas, or you just end up like chatting in the hallway versus everything being like so formal,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, especially when you guys have a creative shorthand and no one,
Yeah.
you support people. And the thing about motion pictures and television is everybody has a team. All the most successful people have a team in place, and they usually keep those people when when scheduling works out. And I think that's important. Now, that for me, obviously, we're going to talk about the second season of Beef, but you did go between movies and TV shows. Like, for instance, I had read the entirety of the graphic novel series of Why the Last Man, and I'm sorry it only lasted a season, but I liked it. I mean, I thought what you guys were doing was great. But could you talk a little bit about the difference between working in TV and working in films, or is there a difference for you?
I think the difference is more like mechanical than creative. Or actually, I'll walk that back a little bit. I do think like with a film, you kind of are able to look at the whole painting, like with the frame around it. You know, you're like, I know this is like the whole story, beginning, middle, and end. This is how much length I have to sort of make the whole visual arc for a character. Whereas like on a TV show, you don't always know where it's gonna end when you start, or it naturally, as it should, evolves, right? Like endings change, scripts change as you go. So there's a little bit more, both like in a cool way, because then you have time. Like there's ideas on Beef that I certainly didn't have at the beginning that sort of took us to where it ended, that evolved as we were shooting, as the script evolves, right? Which is great. But then there's also the challenge of like, oh, you're kind of starting something without knowing always where you're shooting an arrow without quite knowing where the target is always.
Right,
you know?
right.
Sometimes you do. And then I just think TV is, again, mechanically like harder, right? You're prepping an episode the same time as you're shooting. So it feels a little bit more like standing in front of like the tennis ball machine, and just like trying not to get hit, trying to make sure everyone's dressed. But yeah, they both have like, I do think film is in some ways easy. It's easier because you like just know what all of your challenges are before you start, you know? So you're like, okay, I know we're going to have this like big ballroom scene. Whereas on TV, you find out that you're going to have this big challenge sort of halfway through. And it's very rewarding because you're like, oh my God, again, I cannot believe we pulled that off. I have so much pride in our department and the whole production. But it's just mechanically, logistically harder.
Sure. Well, the thing about Beef is I've really liked the second season of Beef. I liked the first season, but I think I just relate to the second season more, I guess.
Oh, interesting. I loved the first season. I was such a...
I did too, but...
I was so excited to work on it because I didn't do season one. Helen did it, and I was such a fan of the whole show. I don't know, but yes, I'm curious to know what your thoughts
Well, I just related more to the characters and I'm Carey Mulligan and I mean I love Oscar Isaac. I love both of these actors. And they've had
so good.
They're so good. I mean, Oscar Isaac was in a film called A Most Violent Year that I'm a huge fan of, and Carey Mulligan I've always loved her work, and it's what I really liked about Beef is there's now kind of this weird, it's not weird, but it's a trend of TV shows reinventing themselves season after season. And it kind of happened with Fargo, or there's another show called The Terror that the first season was based on a specific Dan Simmons novel. And then they created an entirely different storyline with totally different cast and crew. Well, maybe not crew, but a totally different cast. And they take the central conceit of it, but then they move it into it and tell a different story. And I was when they said Beef was going to come back for a second season, I'm like, well, how's that going to work? And I tuned in and I thought, wow, what a prestigious. Not that Ali Wong isn't great because she's hilarious, but to get Oscar Isaac and Carey Mulligan, to come in, I was like, wow, now you have my attention. And it was interesting. How did you get involved? Like you said, you knew the costume designer in the first season was your friend, or?
Actually, I met Helen after I started. She was really gracious. I called her when I was going to do season 2 just to like sort of talk through like. Really, I always try to get like some investigative reporting on like how does this showrunner like to work? How can I like be malleable to like their process?
Sure.
But I was such a huge fan of season 1. I thought like I've always been a huge fan of Steven's work.
Yeah.
Like I think he's amazing, and Ali too. So like, and then I was friends with Grace Yuen, who was the production designer on season 1, and she did season 2.
Stephen Ewan is one of the great, he's not unsung, but his body of work, I don't think people understand the scope of what he does. And he's he's amazing. Just an amazing guy, amazing actor. I don't know him, but he's an amazing actor. So
good. I like watch anything that he's in, and I've always loved Ali's stand up, and I was like really impressed by her as an actress. But just the show in general, I thought like really spoke to like, I related to it on like, I don't know, it was like a certain kind of like loneliness or like a cringiness to the human experience.
Yeah, totally.
And actually I rewatched it ahead of starting work on season 2, and I was like, oh, it's so, I found it like really tender. Like there's the moments when the characters are alone, and there's like a really sweet tenderness and a sadness to it that I really loved. And then back to your question of how I got involved, I don't know. It might have been like through A24, because I've worked with them a bunch, but they sent they like set up the meeting through my agent, and Sonny and I met and kind of went from there.
We didn't mention this, but Love Lies Bleeding is another banger that you worked on. And
thank you so much.
Another movie that I own, a terrific film.
Oh,
and if anybody,
I love that movie.
It's great. And get it. The A24 has a great store, and if I collect physical media, and if you want to go acquire any of their movies like Love Lies Bleeding, you can go to their store and buy it direct. So
Where's their store?
It's online. It's an online store.
Oh.
I mean, and they'll like, you put your birthday in, like my birthday's next week, and I'll get a note going, please pick anything from our store, and you can, so I think I got the Blu-ray of Lamb from them, and they'll send you a disc, and they won't even charge you shipping if you're a member.
Cute.
And it's like $5 a month, and you can be an A24 member. I mean, they're the only studio that's created sort of a cult of personality around it and around its films. I mean, it's kind of an aside.
It's cool, right?
It really is. It really is.
There's like a culture to it. So yeah, I'm not sure how my name got to Sonny initially, but I think, we just had like a regular kind of like meeting, and then I put together a deck for it after I read the pilot. But I was really like inspired by the concept of it. It's such a for a designer, like a really, there's a lot to like dive into, it's like a whole other world that for me was like, I didn't really grow up in country club world. It was like an anthropological, as if it was like doing a period film,
Right.
What I mean? Like, let's really do the research here.
That's interesting. So with TV shows, traditionally they have multiple directors, but in the streaming world sometimes there's one. But you're coming into a show that had sort of an established format that's now being altered and changed. Were you given any mandates in terms of the look of the show, or were you given a lot of freedom to just sort of go with how you envision the scripts and how you envision the characters? And when Oscar Isaac and Carey Mulligan came in, what was your relationship with them, and did they bring ideas, having seen the first season, to the show?
They definitely like brought really strong like character ideas to it, and like, which we can get into, but to kind of like zoom out, I think, Sonny has, I think, the quality I was talking about with Willem, where somebody is really open but very decisive, right? Like, he does genuinely create a culture of like, you can throw out a stupid idea, like, it's kind of open forum. There's a group text thread. Throw any image on there. Throw anything out there. It's welcome, But we'll also very quickly like have a really strong compass of like, yes, this belongs in this world, or this is not quite it, And I think there was a real general openness to making this show this season a departure from season one. I think there's like a lot to be said for the fact that it's not in LA. It's like in Montecito and Ojai, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what does it mean to, like, both of those places are kind of an escape from an urban center, right? So there's just the structure of the stories in a different place. So it's going to look different. It's going to feel different. It's a different socioeconomic class world that you're dealing with, different characters. But I think the world of Beef in general, like, I think he would use the term, like, it has a special sauce. Like, it's very grounded, right? Like, it's a naturalistic, grounded world in a way. But I do think there's, again, what he would refer to as, like, a little extra sauce that you can get on the side of reality, right? Where, like, and sometimes it's a production design moment, sometimes it's a costume moment, sometimes it's a camera thing. But, like, sometimes I'll ask the question of, like, what volume should the costumes be at in a particular...
Oh, that's okay, that's cool.
Yeah, like, whether it's an overall project question or like in this episode or in this scene or whatever, right? And so I do think Beef sort of, there's certain projects like Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, right? The costumes are at a whisper. Like, they're trying to be like really naturalistic. You don't want to draw any attention to it, you know?
Sure.
And then in Love Lies Bleeding, the volume is turned up, like...
I love that. I've never heard that before, equating costume design to volume. I think that's great.
Yeah, I find it's like a really helpful question to get on the same page, you know, like with the director. And I think, like, to your question earlier of, like, how do you like, what's the process, you know? Like, yes, there's the meat and potatoes of the visuals and the fittings and all of that. But really, it's, like, figuring out, like, what the language is, like, to ask the questions in a way that lets you guys both make sure that you're looking at the same things and speaking the same language.
Right.
So anyway, with Beef, I think the volume really goes up and down, which is what sort of makes it really interesting, you know, that there's certain scenes where the costumes are really naturalistic and they're all like within a palette. And then there's times where like the volume really spikes up and you're allowed to kind of make a bigger splash. So figuring out what those moments are, and I think that makes like the collaboration with James, the DP, and with Grace even more important, because you want to make sure that you're not all making a splash at the same moment.
Right. Right. Yeah. Do you equate certain colors to volume levels? Like, are reds loud, you know, and maybe pastels quieter?
Good question. I would say, like, it kind of depends what room they're in, you know? Sure. Right. So, like, if they're in a red room, the red is like a whisper. But if it just depends, yeah, like how much, sometimes it's a color thing of how much they physically stand out. Sure. But sometimes it's just a weird choice. Like, the example that comes to mind is like that cat sweater that Oscar wears in Beef when he's like selling the speakers. Yeah, you know? Yeah. That sweater is not anything bright, but because of like the sort of strangeness of it, that one feels like it's speaking kind of loudly, because it's just like an unexpected choice for that person, you know? Right. Well, now I'm obsessed. Now you've given me something new to obsess over. I'm gonna start looking at TV and movies now in terms of volume. How loud is this? Yeah. How loud is this scene? Yeah. Who's the loud? Is it really the production design loud in this one, or is it the costume design? That's a very cool. And again, if you know people, if you guys have worked together, you can start speaking in your new shorthand that you've created in terms of that kind of volume, because you know, it's like having private jokes.
but you can speak a language. You're developing your own language within a project. Now,
Yeah.
the thing about what I find about beef is inherently there is a rift between there's a relationship that is being torn asunder in some way, and it's how do you do you have a way to translate that, like when you're putting two characters on opposite sides? Is there a way to do that with costume, not just in terms of color, but in terms of like design or the cut of a suit or a dress or something? Like, is that something you even think about, or is how does that work?
I want to make sure I understand. Like, you mean like in terms of, let's say, like for example, you have like Josh and Lindsay, and they're at odds.
Yes.
And
like if they're wearing different armor to protect themselves, like instead of wearing suits of armor, they might wear clothes that are defensive, in terms of their,
totally.
Protecting themselves, like when you might wear bigger, like if I'm walking into a room, I'll wear a power suit if I want to make an impression. But if I'm fighting with somebody, I don't want to be wearing something too goofy because it makes me look.
Totally. I think it's kind of like understanding, really trying to, like, in an acting exercise way, trying to like put yourself in the shoes of that character, and like I'll often kind of think about how they want to present, right? Because I think we all kind of dress that way, like I'm wearing my, like, I'm a costume designer drag right now, like to chat with you. It's like whatever everybody puts on their version of themselves that's going to kind of make them feel like they can rise to the occasion of what they need to do.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And so for somebody like, I'll use Josh and Lindsay as an example, he's the general manager of this club, but really wants to feel integrated with the members. So wants to feel like, I don't really look like staff. You know what I mean? I want to be able to like weave in and out of these like dinners and spaces that he's being invited to, and is kind of hyper aware of assimilating in the way that I described, I think, like an immigration experience. Because I think you can be kind of like a class, like an immigrant through different socioeconomic classes, right? Where you're like, do you have to hyper assimilate of how to fit into this group, and the same thing with Lindsay. Like, we talked a lot about her both being able to like fit into this world in Montecito, but also wanting to feel like I'm like more interesting than these women, Right. So she has moments where she can totally dress the part, and then other times where she does want to signal like, I'm not basic, I'm not like everybody else here, I have better taste, I'm more sophisticated, all of those things,
Sure.
And then how it like relates to like the conflict between them. I think there's times where you want to create like more awkwardness with the dress, but I think for this, like, I really tend to go more towards like from a character place of like, what would these people actually go through the motions of dressing for this moment?
Sure.
But I think at other points, like, it does happen where you're like, oh, I want to, again, sort of reverse engineer like a visual tension between them.
On a show, in the streaming world, you're obviously, shows drop, like on a Netflix, they drop all at once. So when you're working on a show, like it used to be, a network show would be made over the course of, say, 8 months or something. And as you're shooting a show, before you had a lot of episodes, now you have 8 or 10. Are you figuring out the entire costume palette for the entire show initially? Are you being given all the scripts to work off of, and then are you creating your own sort of costume evolution between each episode, or do you approach every episode individually?
I'd say it's like a hybrid. Like, I think you want to know where the show is going to go. And Sonny was really great about, like, some people kind of like hoard information, you know what I mean?
Right.
Until like the script is done. But he was really great about even if, like, just being like, this is where I'm thinking it's going to go, or this is, even if then that would deviate, you kind of had an insight into like where it was headed. And I think you like try to have, or at least I would try to have, kind of a plan for the character, but it evolves quite a bit. And a lot of times, like, that can be from myself. It could also be like actors come in with really great ideas that take time to sort of like ferment, so it doesn't come in until a little bit later. And I think for Sonny and for directors too, like for Jake, it evolves. So like, for example, like I had a sense for Ashley. She was going to be a character that's going to mimic other people in the show, right? She's not very grounded. She's going to at some point want to dress like Lindsay. At some point she's going to want to dress like Eunice. But and I remember the dress that she's in at the very end, the really like poofy sleeve pastoral dress.
Right.
I remember trying that on in like an early fitting of like, oh, let's just see what it looks like if you were to dress a little bit more like one of the women in Montecito, but we didn't have a place for it. It was like, okay, let's try it on. This is an idea. Let's keep this in your closet, but I don't know if there'll ever be a scene to use it, you know?
Sure.
And it wasn't until reading the last episode that we were like, oh, what if we put her in this once she's in Korea? So it's kind of like, I don't know, you have like an idea of something could go somewhere, but you might not know where to plug it in until you
right, sure. But you have it in your quiver that you can pull out.
Yeah, you're always trying to kind of like put things in the like savings account, you know,
Sure.
so that then like you have something to pull from.
Right, which is great. Now, are you given, like, when you've got 8 or 10 episodes to work with, is there room to, like, have you ever had to pivot? Like, you're going in a direction that somehow, because of maybe a script or because an actor makes a choice, that you have to suddenly go in a different direction? Or is it pretty solidified, the costume design of the entire series?
I think you pivot. I mean, I love, from like somebody who just likes to be organized, I love having, especially on a film, but also on a TV show, the looks mapped out as much as possible, right? So like, I really will try to have these kind of like bigger fittings where you try to go through the script and lock in all the looks, because then that lets me, before you get to set that morning, like map out color wise what everyone's in, you know? So it's like, I want to have it all mapped out as much as possible.
Sure.
So that I can make sure everybody's like colors and power dynamics work well together. I find like if you don't make that, and sometimes you can't make that decision because everyone is still like deciding what that scene is about, but as much as you can lock things in, I think you can plan around it accordingly, right? Whether it be with the other characters or with background. But in terms of pivoting, like, I think the pivot happens a lot in the like initial fittings. Like, I can have an idea for a character and I can make a beautiful board for it, and I'll send it to an actor, and we'll have, I like to share boards really early on, like before.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think like for a few reasons. Like one, I think if I put myself in the shoes of an actor, it's like so hard to meet someone for the first time, go into a room with them, try on a bunch of clothes, even if that didn't have to be on camera, I would be like,
right.
No, like that.
I mean,
that's
it's
a
an
hard
intimate
ask,
thing,
right?
and you're putting on clothes, you're being judged, you're asking somebody to, there's an intimacy in that kind of things. It's hard. You can't just come on in. No.
Yeah, you want to establish like a rapport or a thoughtfulness before the fitting ever starts. I think you're also like, they're still trying to find a character. So it's hard in the room, there has to be room for pivots because everyone's still trying to figure it out, right? But to go back to like when things change, it's like, yeah, I can have a board, I can send it to the actor, we have an email exchange. And also it's very beneficial, like on my end, to do that because they'll often have all the time like really great things to add to it,
Yeah.
and you want to be able to have the physical pieces in the room to be able to play with it. So I want that input early on, and the director can see the boards and we're all on the same page. But until you have like the physical actor in the room and can really kind of, everybody has their own energy that they bring, their own center of gravity. That idea has to like be able to adjust and pivot based on just the person's, I don't know, aura, their energy, what they're bringing to the equation, on top of like the idea of the character could evolve.
Sure.
Like I feel like everyone on Beef, yeah, like we had a sense, we went through this whole process, but then it wasn't until being in the room with them that those kind of like pivots start to happen. And I think that's like the really interesting part of the process, actually.
Sure, absolutely. That's really interesting. Do you think that insight into working this way with actors was a result of you understanding through the course of all the training that you had going through college and then working on all the projects you had? Was that something that you came across on your own through just your experience? Because that seems like an insight that some people don't ever get, and that you seem to have it early on.
I think like yes and like I think for sure, I think it comes from a place of like one wanting to be like efficient, right? Like I want to know what if I want somebody's input as early on as possible, and again, I want to like establish, like, why wait until you're at a fitting to establish like a rapport, to be like, hey, I put a lot of thought into this, like I know you're putting a lot of thought into this, let's like again lay that foundation down. So some of that is like self-serving in an efficiency way,
Sure,
but also like on a creative point of view, I just like have so much respect for actors, and they know this character more intimately than anybody else, and they will just like always elevate whatever the idea is that I might bring to it.
that's such a great attitude to have, I think. I mean, it's funny. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, I'm almost out of time. We've been talking for an hour, and talking to you has been incredible. I mean, I didn't want to. I wanted to ask. There's a few questions I wanted to ask because I could talk to you about Beef for another hour, but I don't want to. You're a new mom. You've got better things to do.
Well, it's a pleasure chatting. That's like your questions are really thoughtful, and I really do love. I don't know. I really loved making this season. So it's really
good. It's a really great season
I take a lot of pride, and it's like really it's really fun to reflect on it, because it was like almost a year ago now. So being able to chat about it, when you're doing it, you're sort of like running, and then it's fun to look back and be like, oh, actually, like this was really thoughtful.
Do you have any advice, being that you're going to be doling out advice now for the rest of your life to younger people about what they might want to do? I mean, obviously the business is changing and there's all kinds of new challenges, everything from AI to productions going all over the world. To young people who might want to get into the profession, is there any wise pearls of wisdom you can throw out there?
I don't know how wise they're going to be, but I would say like it's like really just flatlined in my head of
No, well, you've already early on, you talked a lot about your early career, which I think is really insightful and really valuable.
I think like ultimately like really like good work comes from like working with people that you feel comfortable with. I don't know. I would say like overall advice is to like not to get over your own sense of like, I think sometimes film in general, for me at least at first, it felt really intimidating, right? Like it feels something like very out of reach, you know? And however you can kind of like peek behind the curtain to realize that it's all just people who are just as nervous as you are, who are trying to like, I don't know, figure out how to like get their laundry done, not make a like sound weird on an email, and like do their job. Like everyone's kind of in the same boat. I think that kind of like equalizing energy helps you bring like the best version of yourself. And then I think a practical piece of advice is I definitely have like a group of friends who also work in the same business. Some are costume designers, other designers, whatever, who are like available on a hotline basis, right? Like you want to have people who are at different points in their career, some that feel like parallel, some that are like further along. But you want to have like people that you feel comfortable calling to be like, is this weird? Can you read this text before I send it? Should I do this job? Like all of those things, you kind of have a sense that like everyone is just doing it effortlessly. And it's like, it's okay if that stuff takes effort and you need to like run things by people and you just want to have that group of like, I don't know, friends, but also that are very much in the same profession that are going to know all of the dynamics.
Sure.
That can help you sound effortless and smart when actually it takes a lot of effort to do that sometimes. So that's, I think, like the best practical advice is to really like pour into the friendships of people who like carry themselves in a way that you like admire and then like ask for help.
That is fantastic advice. Do you fantastic. Can people follow you on social media? Do you have an Instagram account or anything like that?
I do. It's just my name.
Okay. Olga Mill.
At Olga Mill. Yeah. Okay.
Now, this is going to seem like an off the wall question, but some people in my audience are going to demand I ask this question. Jake Schreier, your director on both seasons of Beef, who did a great job, and some of the writing staff have been tapped to make the X-Men. If you know, and of course he directed Thunderbolts. Are you a superhero fan?
Thunderbolts. I am, but I'm not like very well versed in it. Like sure. I have to admit, like Thunderbolts was one of the first superhero films I saw, and we all watched it when we were in Korea, and I like.
It's pretty great, wasn't it?
Cried and laughed. Yeah, I'd have to look back. I remember sending like Jake and Sonny like a long manifesto text about how much I loved it. Like it was just so smart, and I thought it was really like emotionally intelligent.
I was just going to ask you, do you see yourself ever designing a superhero film in the future? Being that you know some people.
I would not turn down the challenge. I think it's like it's such a whole different box of crayons, right? To play in. So I don't know how to quite answer that. I think every project, every world is again, the more different, the better. But I was there's again people that do it so well. There'd be so much to learn.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just figured I'd ask, being the consummate geek that I am. I'm the X-Men is one of I grew up reading the comics, so I'm very excited to see where they're going to go in Marvel, because they're going to have a whole new.
Actually, I watched the cartoon all the time as a kid.
Yep, it was good. It was good.
Yeah, X-Men has some really juicy characters. I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah. Well, Olga Mill, it was so good to speak with you. Congratulations on the second season of Beef. It's a terrific show, and I think for people who haven't even watched Beef at all, you should tune in and watch both seasons. Do you have anything aside from being a new mom coming up that's going to take over your days?
I don't know. I think right now it's just been 8 weeks, so I'm.
Yeah, I don't mean to.
Production is is a baby, which is really fun and so sweet, and it's actually the overlap, I think, of Beef coming out right around the time that she was born is so interesting. It's really nice to sort of acknowledge all this work that was done during a time when my focus is different, and to sort of celebrate it. So I don't know. But it's I'm really enjoying these two things happening at the same time. It's very, very sweet.
That's very cool. Two different things being born at the same time is only a mitzvah. So that's great.
I know. Thank you so much.
Well, listen, I want to thank you, Olga Mill, for being here on the Designing Hollywood show. And Beef Season 2 is streaming now on Netflix. Thank you very much.
Oh my God, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
A special thank you to founder and executive producer Martika Ibarra, co-founder, costume designer, the legendary Marilyn Vance, and of course, John Campea from the John Campea Show. Thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tune in to the audio version wherever you listen to podcasts. I am, of course, your host, Robert Meyer Burnett, and you can find me on Instagram at rmburnett, or find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or on YouTube at PostGeekSingularity. Thanks very much. Like, subscribe, and give us your comments. What would you like to see on the channel? Right down below. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of Designing Hollywood.